Hi there. All right, we're going to draw a CO2 car or Dragster design car for TSA 2022. Let me move my face. There. Okay. All right, so we're going to use AutoCAD. I'm going to pretend like you've never used it before. So you probably don't have a drawing open. So what you'll do is get AutoCAD open and come up here to this little icon that says New and click on that. And it'll default to this template directory and this file right here. And that one's just fine. And just hit open. And then we'll hit F7. And that turns off that grid in the background. All right, just a couple other setup things real quick to make sure that we're on the same page. Down here in the status bar, make sure the ones that are blue should be turned on. For you, you can click on it to turn it on and off, but you probably don't see this one. But this one here you should see, and make sure it's blue and click the drop down next to it and just set it to this one right here, 45, 90, 135. That's polar tracking, and I'll be showing you that here in a minute. And then this one over here, to get this fly out to go away, I'm just going to click out here. That one should be on, so should this one, object snaps, and the drop down next to that. Make sure that all of these are checked all the way down to extension. And I'll click off of that. All right, so if you've got the same things turned on, we ought to be speaking the same language here as we draw this. All right, we're just going to start by drawing the base block, and I thought I had one right here to show you. You've probably seen these before if you've been in my classes or seen other classes doing these. So we're just going to draw the starting block before we design our cars with that. So to get started, we're just going to start with the line command. Your cursor can be anywhere on the screen, and you can just start typing L for line and enter, or spacebar. If I say enter, you could probably use spacebar, and it does the same thing. I use spacebar probably more because my thumb's already right there. So L and enter or spacebar, and you can click anywhere to start, and it starts a line. And AutoCAD will give you hints on what it wants next down here in the command line. Specify next point. All right, so I need to specify the next point, so I'm going to aim it to the right, and when I get close to 0 degrees, you can see the degrees next to my cursor. It sort of snaps in there. That's that polar tracking at work. All right, so make sure it snaps in there at 0 degrees, and with it aimed that direction, we're going to put in 305 and enter. And I'm going to hit enter again to end the command. Now, it probably shot your line off into space out there to the right. So to see the whole line, you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom out. Zooming out. All right, zoom in and out with the scroll wheel. You can press and hold it down, the scroll wheel, and pan around, right? And the other thing that you can do with the scroll wheel is sometimes you might get so lost in AutoCAD space that you don't know where your stuff went. It's virtually an infinite space to draw. So you can double click your scroll wheel. It's a button. So you can double click that, and I'll zoom out just a little, and there's a line. So double clicking the scroll wheel on the mouse zooms to the extents of whatever you've drawn. So now we can draw another line. So I'll hit L and spacebar. When I get close to this end point, it actually sort of snaps in again. That's object snaps. Right? Mine shows a little green box with end point next to it. That's what I want, so I click that. That means it's right on the end of that line exactly. I'll aim it straight up, and sort of locks in there at 90 degrees. And with it aimed that direction, we'll put in 70. And then I'll hit spacebar to end the command or enter. And I'll hit spacebar again. And what it does is it restarts the last command I used, so line. I'll click here, aim it up, 20. And this is going to be millimeters, okay? So 20 millimeters, and I'll hit enter. And then I'm going to leave my line command going and click up here. And I'll hit enter to end the command. And there's the basic shape of the front view of this, this starting block, okay? We're going to use our orthographic projection to get the top view. And that's just a fancy way of saying we're going to use this plane, this front face, to go sort of 90 degrees and get the top view. We're going to use some information from this. All right, so L, enter. And this time I'm not going to click, but I'm just going to hover over this endpoint for a moment. And when I move it away, there's a little green plus sign that shows up. That is the object snap tracking, okay? And so from that point that I hovered over, it's going to track. So it kind of locks in there. I'll aim it up, and I'll go maybe 50 millimeters, right about there. And then I'll come over here and hover over that for a moment, that endpoint, and then bring it up. And again, that little green plus sign should be there. And when I get close to, there we go, where it locks in there, I'll click that. All right, so now that line is the same length as the first line that we drew. All right, and this block is 42 millimeters wide, so I'm aiming it straight up, 42, and I'll hit enter. Hover over this point and come up and click there, and then I'll click here to close that, and then spacebar to end the command. So that's the block, but the other thing that we want to show is that that hole in the back, right? That hole in the back for the CO2 canister, okay? And if I remember right, it's 33 millimeters from the bottom, approximately. There's a little variation. So to do this, I'm going to kind of zoom in on the back of this and do L for line. I'll just hover over this endpoint and then aim it up, 33, and enter. So by hovering over that endpoint and hitting 33 when I aimed it up, it starts the line 33 millimeters above that point, if that makes sense. We'll do that a lot more. You'll get used to it. All right, I'm going to aim it to the left, and this will be 50, and enter. I'll hit enter again to end the command, and then we're going to use a new command. It's going to be the offset command, O and enter. And the offset distance is going to be 10. I'll click on this line. It says select object that you want to offset. So it's going to offset at 10 millimeters, and I get to pick which side it's going to offset. So I'll click down below, and offset stays active, so I can click that again and aim it up and click there. So now I've offset 2 lines, and I can hit spacebar to end the command. I'll select this line. Actually, I'm going to leave that for a moment. But when you select a line, you'll see these blue boxes. Those are grip points. I'm going to leave that for a moment. I was going to delete it, but I'll hit escape, and that will deselect it. L for line, enter, and I'll click here and here, and I'll hit the spacebar or enter. I'll zoom out just a little bit, pan down. Now I want this CO2 chamber to be visible above as well. So I'm going to copy this up there. So I'll just select these lines, and I'll hit CO for copy. I'll hit spacebar. Now it wants a base point. This is the point from which it's moved, or sort of the handle where you grab the objects that you selected. I'm going to choose this point right here, and that's sort of the handle, all right? And so I'm grabbing it there, and then it says the second point, or the destination point, it's going to be right here. That green triangle means I'm getting the midpoint exactly on that line. So I'll click there, and I'll hit spacebar to end the command. I'll select this line and hit delete. And so we've got the basic object drawn. And we'll do one more thing before we're done here. This hole, if you look at the front view of this block, you can't see the hole, right? It's inside. So we want to show that by making these dashed lines, or actually they're called hidden lines. So come up here. This is in your Home tab, Properties panel. This bottom drop down here is for line types. I'll click on it, hit Other, and then Load. And if I bring this down a little bit, I should see Hidden right there. So click on that. Okay. Okay. So now I'll select these lines that represent the CO2 chamber that's sort of inside the body of the car. I'll come back up here to the drop down, and now Hidden should be one of the options. I'll click that, and I'll hit Escape to deselect. And it didn't look like anything changed, but if I zoom way in, I can see, oh, it's really small. And that's because we're working in millimeters, so we can change this by hitting LTS for line type scale, LTS and enter. And then the new line type scale will be 10, I believe. There we go. And that looks pretty good. That just shows there's something there, but it's within this sort of solid object that we're trying to draw. All right, so that's the top view and front view, and I think, yeah, we'll go ahead and stop there, and we'll continue on in the next video.